Today, we're diving into a critical leadership choice right at the intersection of climate change and social justice, all happening in Namibia. This entire explainer is based on a fantastic teaching case by Shreya Jajoo, and it basically puts you in the president's shoes.
All right, let's just jump right in. Imagine this. You've just made history. You are your country's first female president. But there's barely a moment to celebrate because your nation is on the absolute front lines of a devastating climate crisis. Now, for Namibia's new leader, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, this isn't some thought experiment. It's her reality. So, what do?
Well, there are no easy answers here. The choice really boils down to three very different paths. Do you go for bold, sweeping, nationwide reform all at once? Or do you play it a bit safer, starting with smaller pilot programs to test the waters? Or do you reframe the whole conversation and sell your vision not as a matter of justice, but as a strategy for economic growth? Each one of these has huge risks and, potentially, huge rewards. We're going to break them all down. But first, you really need to understand the leader at the center of the story. So, to really get a handle on this monumental choice, we first need to understand the leader herself. Let's talk about President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah. President Nandi-Ndaitwah is absolutely no stranger to a tough fight. I mean, her entire life has been a struggle for freedom and progress. She joined the SWAPO liberation movement when she was just 14 years old. She served as a diplomat in exile, fighting for her country's future. And after independence, she took on major roles in the government, all while championing things like the zebra system, a really cool push for 50-50 gender parity. So we're talking about a seasoned, incredibly determined leader. And this quote right here, it gets to the very heart of her mission. For her, it isn't just about political power. It's about real, tangible empowerment. It's about women getting access to land, to credit, to markets, to jobs. She sees empowering women as absolutely central to Namibia's future. Now, the philosophy behind all her actions has a name. It's called gender-responsive governance. And look, this isn't just some buzzword. It's not about just adding a few women to the conversation and calling it a day. It's about fundamentally redesigning policy to address gender differences from the ground up and making sure women's voices are actively part of every single decision. This is core to her strategy for tackling both inequality and the climate crisis. Of course, you can have the greatest vision in the world, but it always has to confront the reality on the ground. And in Namibia, the challenges are complex and they are rooted deep in the country's history. Just let this number sink in for a second. 80%. That is how much of Namibia's land is arid or semi-arid. It's one of the most climate-vulnerable nations in the region. This isn't some problem for the future. It's happening right now, putting incredible pressure on resources and people. And you can't understand Namibia today without looking back. History casts such a long shadow here. It was a German colony, then ruled by South Africa under apartheid. A long, hard struggle for freedom, led by the SWAPO party, only resulted in independence in 1990. Those deep inequalities from that past, they didn't just vanish overnight. And all of that history leads directly to the hurdles they're facing right now. The economy is heavily dependent on industries like mining and livestock, which are really tough on the environment. And because of those deep-seated historical patterns, it's rural women who are hit hardest by drought and food insecurity. The legacy of colonialism is still very, very real. So you have a visionary leader and a nation in crisis. You'd think everyone would be on board, right? Well, not so fast. Any bold vision for climate action inevitably runs into a wall of resistance. And President Nandi-Ndaitwah's agenda is certainly no exception. And the opposition isn't just one single group. It is coming from all different directions. You have traditional leaders who are worried that these reforms will undermine their authority over land. You've got the corporate sector worried about profits and scaring off investors. And get this, even within her own political party, some SWAPO veterans worry her big plans could split the party apart. It is a political minefield. Okay, so now that we have the full picture, the leader's vision, the nation's tough history, and that big wall of resistance, we can come back to the central dilemma. Let's really analyze the president's three strategic options. First, let's just be crystal clear about the ultimate goal here. We're talking about gender-inclusive climate policy. What does that actually mean? It means intentionally bringing women, especially from communities that have been pushed to the margins, into every single part of the process. From governance to resource management to adaptation, it's about making them agents of change, not just victims of it. So let's break down the trade-offs. Path 1, bold reform, is the go big or go home approach. It's high risk, high reward. You could get rapid systemic change, but you also risk a massive political backlash. Path 2, the incremental pilots, is the cautious route. It's slower, for sure, but you build trust, you gather evidence, and you minimize the risk. And finally, Path 3, the economic reframe. This one is clever. You pivot the whole conversation to be about investment and growth. The upside, you might win over some skeptics. The downside, you risk watering down the core message, which is all about justice. So why does this choice in Namibia matter to the rest of us? Because this isn't just about one country's policy decision. It's a powerful, universal lesson in leadership and what it takes to make real systemic change happen. This situation gives us a blueprint for any leader trying to drive change anywhere. First, you have to acknowledge how the past shapes today's resistance. Second, you gotta map out all the competing interests, who wants what and why. Then you have to find that sweet spot between a bold, inspiring vision and a pragmatic, workable strategy. It shows us that big change isn't about avoiding compromise. It's about navigating it smartly to build the biggest coalition you possibly can. So we end where we started, with a choice that every leader faces in some form. When those walls of resistance are towering over you, is it better to try and smash right through them? To slowly build consensus, brick by brick, or to try and change the entire conversation? There's no single right answer, and that tension, that's the very essence of leadership at a crossroads.